Good morning. Welcome to Unity South Central Region's Business Mastermind. I am Ariana Platten. I have been leading this program for about 3.5 years, and I'm grateful to be here with you. Grateful for all the beautiful faces on the screen, and grateful for those of you that are joining afterward and watching the replay. I want to remind you that this class runs every first and third Wednesday of the month. First Wednesday, we will gather for some training, and the third Wednesday is open forum, and you can always watch whatever we're talking about in the recorded archives on the Unity South Central website. This page, as I explained before we went to record, this archive, as well as the classes that are offered at no charge. And we very much appreciate your ongoing financial support of the South Central region, which allows us to do that. So thank you so much for your ongoing contributions. We're talking this morning about creating a thriving volunteer program. And that's a really important topic. How we get volunteers, who our volunteers are, how we retain volunteers, and why does it really matter? So I'm going to jump right into our slide presentation this morning. And we'll go from there. Let's see if I can get what I need to have happen. There we go. And let me hit this button. There we go. All right. So, creating a thriving volunteer program. Most of us have a volunteer program. We have people who are working with us and getting things done. Your volunteers can be anything from ushers to your fellowship people. In some communities, even administration is handled by volunteers. Some people have volunteers who are photographers. Some people have volunteers who are helping in services in other ways. There are lots and lots of things that qualify as volunteering. One of the interesting things about considering your volunteer program is understanding that your volunteer program is more than a way to reduce expenses. It obviously reduces expenses. Any place that we can plug the community in with volunteers allows us not to have to pay a staff person to do that job. Something as simple as mowing the lawn every Sunday can be a very expensive venture over the course of spring to fall. So if we can get groups of people who are willing to do that, we can reduce expenses. And we know that that is a really important thing for every church, that all of us as spiritual centers want to reduce our expenses. But I want to talk about volunteering from an entirely different perspective today. I want to talk about it from the perspective of connection, spiritual growth, and shared purpose, which really addresses volunteerism from the perspective of what the participant gets rather than what the church gets. Why is the participant volunteering? Why is somebody there? What would invite someone into volunteering? So the very first reason to encourage people towards volunteering is that it opens the door to connection. And I want you to think about the number of people who come to your spiritual center and what brings them through the door. More often than not, people come into your spiritual center because they're looking to meet other people, because they're lonely. Loneliness is epidemic. It's hitting us at epidemic proportions. And people decide that they need to come to a spiritual center because they need to make new friends. They need to feel connected to something. They come also because they carry a pain. Something is hurting in their soul right now. Something is changing in their life. They're struggling with change. They're struggling with loss. They're struggling with a shift maybe in themselves. Something is creating a shifting sand sense under their feet. They're not quite sure where they are. And they want to be around people who feel a little bit more confident about where they are, who feel a little bit more certain about what they believe. So volunteering takes someone who just walked in your door as a visitor and plugs them in, gives them an opportunity to interact directly with other people besides you. Because it's great for them to see you and hug you at the door and get to know you, but they're looking for something that feels like belonging. And belonging happens when you join a team. Belonging happens when there's something to be done, when you feel like you have something to bring to the community. It isn't just attending that makes you feel like you belong. You can attend week after week, and we all know people who do this, who've attended week after week and are sitting in the pews or in the chairs, whatever we have as a place for them to sit, watching and witnessing community, but not necessarily being one with the community, participating or feeling connected. They're waiting. They're waiting for someone to talk to them. They're waiting for someone to have something in common. They're waiting to be invited in. And it's that, I often think how we say the loneliest, we can be in a whole group of people and be the loneliest we've ever been. Sometimes that happens in our spiritual centers, that people come to our spiritual centers and they're more lonely than they were before they came in, because we're so kind of used to talking to each other. We know who our friends are. We know what table we sit at in fellowship. We know which part of the sanctuary we're going to sit in. Our friends are going to sit somewhere close to us, and people can come in and not feel connected at all. So volunteering invites people in. It creates a sense of belonging and purpose, and we'll talk more about that as we go along. It also provides opportunities for spiritual growth. It is a spiritual service. It's the way we give to a source that gives to us. And that creates a different kind of relationship with the concept of the divine. That when we give into something, we have a different expectation for what we get back from something. And it opens us up in a different way. So we always, I think in unity, we always struggle kind of with that language around God inside and God outside. And a lot of what happens for people who are coming to unity, who are new to unity, is they're beginning to understand, they're opening themselves to a very small seed of an idea that they might be some expression of the divine. But without a place to give that, without a way, a coaching for how to give that, it's a hard seed to get to sprout. But if we teach our volunteer corps as a whole group that they really are the hands, the heart, the moving energy of the indwelling divine, they begin to have application for that concept. Who will you be as the eyes of God at the door, meeting people who come into the sanctuary? Who will you be as the welcoming spirit of the holy, as people come to pray here or come to an event here, or come to celebrate with us? What would that look like? If you were the expressive body of the indwelling divine, what would it look like? How would you greet people differently? How would you interact differently? How much more sincere would your smile be? So it gives people an embodiment opportunity, a true opportunity to embody this very core principle of who we are as unity. It also strengthens the mission, because our missions are to expand spirituality, to be love in action, to stand for and to express the divine, to speak that into community, to live that into community. And we say it in lots of varied ways. But for most of our spiritual communities, our missions align with our principles. So when we're engaging both existing members of our community and new members of our community in exercises where they belong, where they embody the divine, and where they step fully into service, They are now actively engaged in our mission rather than just experiencing the words of the mission. And that's an important piece, that our mission becomes a living thing, something that we can embody as well as the work that we do. When people give, they experience a sense of accomplishment and hope, capability. So when people are on the outside looking in, it's very easy to feel apathetic and uninvolved, and as though there's nothing you can do to help. And in today's world, this is an important thing. We're going to see people feeling like they don't know what to do. It doesn't matter where you stand politically or where you stand just in the changing face of AI and different ways of communicating and new challenges in the world. All of that makes us feel, if we're not careful, can make us feel apathetic and exhausted and unable. But when we volunteer, and it can be something as simple as standing behind the serving table in fellowship and saying good morning and having someone say back to you, thank you so much, this food is so good. Thank you for making sure we have something to share. That little bit, or, Donna, your smile changes everything on Sunday mornings for me. Just the fact that you're standing here smiling at me makes me feel so much better. Those little things, those little comments, niceties, connections that people make through their volunteer service allows them to feel that they actually can make a difference in the world. And they can. Because one of the greatest differences that we can make is to support each other with kindness. It gives us a place to be kind and a place to see the impact in a world that would have us believe that we can't make a difference. So this whole area of volunteering is incredibly important to the spiritual growth of your community. It's how we embody what we do. It's how we grow spiritually, and it's how we learn that we can make a difference. And you're going to hear me say this. By the time I'm done, you're going to say, you said the same thing 5 times, 5 different ways. I am going to do that. I know that I'm doing that. I'm doing it because I want you to really understand that the core of your volunteer program is not about your church. It's about your congregants. It's about what they get. So sometimes we feel guilty asking somebody to step in again. I asked you to step in for this, and I really need a volunteer for that. And sometimes we hear from our community, man, we have so many volunteer things to do. But we have to know as spiritual leaders what the ultimate objectives of those volunteer programs are. What are the outcomes that benefit the people who participate in our communities? And they're really powerful, powerful outcomes that change people's lives. And a lot of times that's lost. A lot of times we don't translate that to our board, to our staff, or even to our teams, and most especially our team leaders, who need to understand when they're asking someone to volunteer that they're giving a gift. In fact, they're giving a whole basket full of gifts. So to develop a strong volunteer culture, you have to provide that clear purpose. Volunteers have to understand what their impact is. So when you have volunteers, when you're asking for volunteers to stand at the door as ushers on Sunday, what is their job? Why are they there? It's more than a handshake. Your people at your doors are an extra safety measure for you, aren't they? They're keeping the eyes open for who's walking in. They deserve a tremendous amount of training because they are your eyes. You are up on the platform doing what you do. You cannot be at the door. They do more than the necessary things. They do more than pass the basket and hand people a program. They watch who's coming in the door. They say good morning to those they know. And if they don't know someone, they say, hi, it's nice to meet you. Is it your first time here? Let me make sure you have what you need. If they're brand new in your community, they can stand at the door and say good morning. It's not a hard job, but it is a critically important job to have the people at the door of your sanctuary hold the space between your lobby and your sanctuary, because that is a liminal space. That threshold takes people from everyday conversation, hey, Mary, how are you? Hi, George, great to see you again, blah, 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 to we are entering into sacred space together. That doorway is a liminal reminder that you are moving from common community space to the sanctuary. I'm so glad you're here this morning. Thank you so much for bringing your heart. It makes me happy every time I see you. Please come in. You're very welcome here. Please come in. Those things remind us that we're entering a different kind of space. They're not the ways that we are greeted at the grocery store. Nobody stands at the door and says, hey, except at Christmas when they're ringing the bell. Nobody stands there and says, hey, come on in. But at our spiritual centers, that job is really important. Do your ushers and your greeters understand why that volunteer job is so critical? That they are holding sacred space with you and contributing to the Sunday morning experience in a big way. Do the people standing in your kitchen on Sunday morning making sandwiches and accepting volunteer, donations of food, do they really understand that while they're serving food, hospitality is their job? That we're giving people a sense of what hospitality is. And hospitality is a sacred act. It is to give the best of what we have to one another, to hold that you are deserving and welcome here, and this that we offer you, these potato chips and carrot sticks and whatever else they are, whatever we have here, we're sharing together as community, not just to nourish our bodies, but to nourish our souls. These kinds of conversations, especially from those of you who are ministers, to really look at every job. A photographer who comes into events is capturing sacred moments to celebrate the good work that your community does, not just with those who were there, but with those who were unable to be there, who want to see and stay connected. So every one of your teams does something more than fill a space. Yes, you need these people. Mowing the lawn, a very mundane task, isn't it? We just have to have it mowed because it looks a mess if we don't. Mowing the lawn is to prepare that building. We call I work with Unity Spiritual Center in the Rockies in Colorado right now, and we call our building facility volunteers temple keepers, because that's what they do. They hold the temple. Because when people walk in our building, we want the building to be clean and neat and running well. Because if it isn't, people will be distracted. Oh, there's trash over there and that's dirty and nobody wiped down this window and the bathroom is a mess. When people come to our sacred space, we don't want them to be distracted. They're coming with a heart that needs attention. For whatever reason, we don't want them to be distracted by things not working right or things not being clean and neat and ready. We want the space to feel like a sacred space. So our teams that do that work do incredibly important work. They clean and care for the building so that people can come into a temple space, into a holy, brilliant light, where they can experience a kind of connection and healing that they don't necessarily experience anywhere else. And when there is no distraction from that, the people who come in the door can put their full attention on the sacred experience that they're having. And when they have that experience, they're the ones that will tell you, I feel like I found my home. Because what they didn't find was the dirty kitchen sink at their home. What they found was a place that feels like it's cared for. And if the place has the energy of care, then the people will have the energy of care. So these volunteer positions are incredibly important to explain to your team leaders. What is the spiritual impact of the most mundane job you can do for the people who participate? When you explain that and give clear purpose to your volunteers, their job becomes very important to them. They suddenly understand something different about it. When you drive in and the lawn is well cared for and it looks beautiful, people feel like they're coming to a special place. And that allows them to open their heart to the music and the message in a different way. So how we talk about volunteering and how we thank people from the podium becomes really important. We want to make sure that we create a welcoming atmosphere. You're new here, come in. Where would you like to plug in? There's something that you can do to contribute. And we find that however you come in to contribute, whether you give your time, your talent, your tithe, whatever it is, that when you come in and you contribute, you will get more from the community. So come in. You are not only welcome here, we're going to bring you into conversation and action. Giving recognition from the podium is your chance to say to your community what they need to appreciate about your teams. Not, hey, let's thank the music director and let's thank the ushers and let's thank the guy running AV back there. Yay! Why are we thanking them? Because we sang, they said hello, and somebody made sure the mics were on. No. We're thanking them for helping us hold the sacred space that gave the experience to the people who were there. The music that deepened us. The sound, which is invisible to us, but was so lovingly cared for by George back in the booth, allows us not to struggle to hear, but to fully receive the bounty of the message that's been offered today, the gift of the message. So thank you, George, for doing that. Thank you to the ushers who both keep a safety eye on the door and usher us across the threshold into sacred space to help us understand there's a difference between what happens outside our sanctuary doors and in the lobby and what happens here. How you speak to that from the podium, the thanks that are offered will make a huge difference in what people understand about their volunteer service. And there is a giving to the idea of spirit. That there's a Hindu word called seva, S-E-V-A. And seva is different than volunteering. Seva is sacred service. It means I'm giving to the sacredness of this experience versus I'm volunteering because I have some extra time and I can make things easier. So whether you use that word or not, because not everybody is familiar with it, if you're going to use that word, you have to train to it. But to train to the concept, go online, spend a little time, do yourself the favor of learning the words that describe seva, S-E-V-A, and speak to your volunteers from the savic perspective. That, we open ourselves to spirit, to be the hands and heart of spirit in all the things that we do. And when we learn how to do that in our spiritual community, we learn how to do it at the grocery store and in our office and in our home. We learn how to bring a different part of ourselves forward. It's important, if you want your culture to thrive, to give people easy ways to participate. Hey, just try this job for 4 weeks. See what you think. Let's check in with one another in 4 weeks and see if you like being an usher, or you like working here, you like working there. You don't have to mow the lawn all summer long. If you'll do this 4 weeks, I'll get somebody for 4 weeks. You do June, I'll get somebody for July, and I'll get somebody different for August. So somebody who loves the work will come back and go, oh, you don't need to get somebody else. I love doing this. I want to keep doing it. But giving people a chance to have a soft entry, a short commitment to you, gives them a chance to feel like it's manageable for them, and also to have all the experiences of connection, belonging, and purpose. And once they have that, even if they don't like that particular job, they will want a place to plug in. So the thing that continues to keep people in their volunteering frame of mind is the connection, the purpose, and the sense of belonging. Over and over again, they'll come back. And that's why people do more and more, right? We have some volunteers who do more and more. To recruit people involves personal invitation. I really could use some help with this. Let me tell you why this job is important to me. It's more than what you think. This particular job accomplishes this. One of the women who was working with me several years ago really wanted a way to give to the community. And I wanted to do a member dinner. I wanted to do every month, invite 12 to 15 members to a potluck dinner, just members, so that I could sit at the table and get to know the members and have a chance to have them tell their story about how they got to the church, why they stay at the church, what's important to them. But it's a big job to take the membership list and break it up into people and make the calls and invite people to bring food and make sure you have all the different kinds of food you need and all of that. It's a big job. The person who stepped up for the job had been in the community 6 months. She was in that job for 5 years because she got to know, she was there at every dinner. She very quickly became a member, and she very quickly began to understand the power of membership because she heard people talk about it. And she loved the job. And for 5 years, she did all that work. I have never been so thankful for someone. The amount of work that was massive, but she was retired. She had the time. She wanted to contribute in a big way. And she made a significant difference. And she felt like, and did know everybody who did anything at the church, because people talked about how they plugged in, what their volunteer jobs there were, how long they'd been there, what brought them to the church, all of that. So a personal invitation can bring the right person to the table. Sharing the stories. What do people get? Why are people volunteers? Have you asked those volunteers who are your stars? We all have them. They're the ones that we say, really, you want to take on another job? You're not doing enough already? We have those. We all have them. Ask them for their stories. Why do they volunteer so much? So that you have that story to pass on to a volunteer. And let me tell you about Mary. She's been doing this for a long time. Here's what she got out of it. Here's why it's such a cool thing. Tell those stories from the platform. Volunteering here has a gift. Here's what you can expect to receive. For someone to volunteer, you want to set them up for success. To be successful, they need to know what the job is, which means you need to know what the job is. If you have a volunteer photographer, what are they taking pictures of? Are they standing at the front of your sanctuary on Sunday morning, taking pictures of every crowd, or are they only taking pictures of a certain kind of event at a certain time and in a certain way? Sometimes people are not comfortable having their picture taken. Do they need to ask people? Do you need a sign in the sanctuary that says you might get your picture taken if you're in here? You have to think through your volunteer positions, describe them, and provide your volunteer leaders with a clear description of what you're asking for, and be ready to answer questions. It's more than just a title. It's actually a job. And there is a description that needs to go with it so that you can clearly train them. Give them that low barrier of entry, that short window and create in your community conversation around a culture that is oriented towards service to one another. A lot of times I like to talk about the fact that we do a lot of things outside of our building for other people. We donate food, we go on walks, we stand downtown and give things away. We do lots of different things. We collect coats, you all do all of those things. But what do we do for one another? How do we serve one another inside our building? All of our volunteer teams are about service to our community. It's how we give back to each other. And it's also where we say thank you for the giving. Now, I'm going to fix the sandwich and you're going to say thank you for the sandwich, because that's the basic information we were taught as small children. Please and thank you. Would you like this? Yes, please and thank you, right? So we're teaching appreciation for one another, and that grows the community. That grows a culture of service and connection and care. That is, again, answers the loneliness that people feel that brought them to the church in the first place. If you have a group of volunteers, but they just feel like, oh, I've been volunteering forever, then you want to re-energize them. You do that by having clear communication. Thank you so much. I don't know if you know how important you are here, but let me tell you why this job you do really matters. That kind of communication really helps. Is there anything I can do to make this job easier for you? Is there anything you would suggest we do or change in the job description for this job now that you're doing it? Because you're going to see things that I won't see. So cultivating volunteers is a conversation and it's an involvement. It's not a taken for granted, well, we have a team leader, I don't need to do that. You can turn a lot of the cultivation over to the team leader if you do regular trainings for your team leaders. If you have a leadership council of your team leaders and you bring them together twice a year, 4 times a year, and you talk through how they energize their volunteers and you train them well, then you don't have to be the one that does it, but you have to offer this same kind of training to those people so that everyone gets that sense that what they're doing is important. Show appreciation, we talked about that. Encourage friendships and teamwork. Encourage them. One of the ways that you can encourage them is when you're doing your budgeting, to ask each team to put together a small budget or a way that they will have a team dinner of their own, or a team lunch, or a team picnic, or a team what do you as the team leader do? Bring them together in your backyard, have a barbecue. But besides the big volunteer dinner that we do, when do you as the team leader pull your team together to say thank you and to build friendship, to just give people time to talk and get to know each other? There's a whole opportunity for your team leaders to bring small groups together and create deeper friendships. And that makes a big difference also in the quality of volunteering you have. And there's a measurement process. So if you looked at your community right now, what is the percentage in your community of members who actively volunteer? Most of the time, if you've been a minister at your community for a couple of years, you can look at your membership list with a pen and check off the people who regularly volunteer. And so, you can look and go, I have 100 members and I have 30 people who regularly volunteer. Okay, that's easy. You have, 30%. What is the percentage? Figure it out. Do the math to figure out the percentage. And if you don't know how to do that, write me a note and I'll help you. I'll help you figure it out. To figure out the percentage and then inform your community. Right now we have 30%. We'd like to get to 35% by the end of the year, because volunteering is good for your soul. It will change your life. So if you've been thinking about volunteering and you haven't quite stepped up, now is a really good time. And then celebrate that milestone that as a community, you have increased your volunteering, you've increased your service to one another, you have opened your heart in a new way and really gotten more engaged as a community. Celebrating those small steps means doing the work to measure. And measuring your impact is how you create long-term success. One of the things that happens every year is, for most of us, is that we have a lunch for people or a dinner for people and thank them for volunteering. Always, I encourage you always to have a conversation about burnout. If you've been a volunteer for the last 5 years and you feel like you have to step on another team, but you really don't have the energy for it, it's okay to take a little time off. Take 6 months, take a year. You'll know when you're ready to come back. We want you to come back enthused. But if you need us to charge your batteries a little bit because you've been giving a lot and you need to let some other people step in to give, then do that. Do that. Take care of yourself. Giving permission for people to step out is really important because burnout is, you can tell somebody's in burnout when they're in resentment. You'll see it in yourself. So if you're a minister and you're in your office, I can always tell when I'm exhausted and riding that burnout line, because somebody will come in my office and say, I know you're really busy, but, and the first thought in my head, instead of, oh, don't worry about it, what can I help you with? The thought in my head when I'm exhausted is, then why are you asking me? If you know that I'm already exhausted or I'm already busy, why are you asking me? That is resentment. And resentment means you haven't been taking care of yourself. So we don't want our volunteers interacting from resentment. It's painful for them and for the rest of the community. So when you have an overzealous volunteer, be sure that you encourage them toward balance and self-care. If your volunteers are not engaged, it's going to be because they don't understand the purpose of the job. They don't understand how important it is. It's just something they're doing. Nobody's saying thank you. And they're doing it, but they feel unseen and undervalued. So we've talked about that. And communication gaps are a big issue. Between one team and another really good thing that can happen when you have a leadership council made up of the people who are your team leaders is that they have the ability now to come together and see how one job affects the other job. So for example, if you have a good usher team in good relationship with your fellowship team and the service is running long, the ushers can run back and say, hey, don't worry, the service is running a little long. They'll be here in just a few minutes. Those kinds of gifts that we give one another, paying attention to one another, to each other's teams, makes a big difference in how connected the whole community feels. So creating ways to communicate and interact is that it's always going to be an issue, and it's always going to make things better if you address the issue. So let's recap. All of us want a thriving volunteer culture. We not only do we want it, for the success of our community, we need it. Most of us have small staffs, and there are way more jobs to do in our spiritual community than we have paid staff to do. We need our volunteer corps. We need them to be enthused, to be reliable, to be well-trained, to be effective in their jobs. That takes work from us. It takes learning to lead from not just love. We will always lead from love. When I went into ministry, I asked someone who had been a minister for 25 years, what's the most important advice you can give me? And he said, all anybody ever wants is to feel loved, which turned out to be some of the very best advice I have ever received when it comes to ministry. If I can just remember that, I can get through lots of things. We're always going to speak from love, but to involve purpose and make sure that your crew understands the purpose of what they're doing. The bigger spiritual purpose is going to change how your volunteer teams feel, how successful they are, how reliable they are, and how how long they stay. Creating an environment that is an inviting and inclusive environment happens because we train our leaders to be good team leaders. We don't just give them responsibility, we give them support. And to celebrate every week, you can do it. You're behind that podium every week. Hey, this week I noticed so-and-so. I found some little necklaces. I want to say they cost me like 75 cents a piece. This has been a couple of years ago, but they said, thank you for the good that you do, in a little spiral on a little coin. It was the little cheap, you know, the chains that you use like to pull a fan, the little ball chains. It was a little cheap necklace. It wasn't anything expensive, but I bought 52 of them and I gave one away every week from the podium and picked a volunteer every single week. Over time, you get to everybody. Ask your team leaders to let you know if somebody really needs to be noticed, because sometimes you don't see everything that's being done. But there's something about thanking people, even if you just give them a thank you card. Even if once a week you send a thank you card to a volunteer. I've seen what you're doing. You are so critically important to what we do around here. I just wanted to take a minute and give you a note to let you know that I see you. I've been meaning to say this all week, and we're both busy when we're together. So I just want to say thank you. That kind of thing celebrates and supports the people who work hard for you, the people who are part of your community, the people who you rely on, and the people who are giving for an important reason. So that gives you a lot to think about, some suggestions, some ways that you might improve your program. When we come back in 2 weeks, as always, I'll ask you if you have any challenges in whatever the topic is. So this month, I'll ask you if you have any challenges related to volunteering, but it's also an open and private forum. If you have something else up that you want to talk about, we hold confidence for one another. We're all well trained in that. We hold confidence for one another, and we work through things together in our second meeting of the month. So I would love to see you, love to have you join us. Same bat time, same bat channel, and it will still be dark because I will still be in Bali. And I am just so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for the powerfully important work that you do, for the way that you serve. Ministry is an incredibly soul satisfying and also incredibly challenging job. And you make a difference every single day in how you breathe yourself into that job. I encourage you to keep taking good care of yourself, because the world needs you more than ever right now. So take good care of yourself till I see you again. Many blessings. I love you. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to bed. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you soon.